Curmudgeon's fourth commandment of good political hygiene reads as follows. When thou art facing a scandal and deciding whether to attempt damage control or just let the thing ride, payest thou great heed to the possibility that the damage control may cause worse damage than the thing itself. Richard Nixon, to name the most obvious example, he would have done well to heed Curmudgeon's fourth commandment, but since he resigned from office six weeks before I was born, that one is not on me. But seriously, all Nixon had to do is tell the truth in the beginning, and there is no Watergate scandal. He just has to say, I didn't know anything about any damn burglary. This was a few weirdos working as independent contractors for the party central committee. They were trying to score themselves some good jobs in the campaign, and they thought pulling off this break-in would impress me somehow. But it didn't. So I hope they're prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This administration and this campaign do not approve of criminal activity in any form. That's all it would have taken. And we'll never know a good answer for why Richard Nixon, who to this day has received more votes in presidential elections than any candidate in the history of the country, pissed away his career and his reputation over a misplaced desire to cover up some dumb burglary that he didn't know about and had nothing to do with. But we can see it just as plain as day when a guy who is too young to know better repeats the mistakes of Nixon just because he doesn't know any better. Which brings us neatly along to George Santos, the Jewface Congressman. And I think I'm not sure whether I prefer Jewface or trans-Jewish, but in a world where all of one's immutable personal characteristics are fully negotiable on a day-by-day basis, where we can change the parameters of reality simply by affirmation and incantation, it was only a matter of time before Republicans started wanting to get some of that sweet candy too, right? Now, George Santos, if you haven't guessed by now, he is decidedly non-Jewish. He is about as Jewish as Osama bin Laden eating a BLT. But when he was crafting his political identity, George Santos decided he wanted to be a Jewish investment banker, and so a Jewish investment banker he duly became. You know, like when you were a little kid and you wanted to be a superhero, so you fashioned yourself a cape out of a bath towel and safety pinned it in front and went swooping around the house pretending you could fly. And hell, I guess if there is anything improbable about this story, it's that none of this stuff actually came to light until after the election was over. And even as bad as this is, pretending to be a Jewish investment banker when you're actually neither of those things, Santos could have survived it by discovering those two magic words. No comment. And yeah, sure, the internet, they're going to have a field day with you. Maybe 2 or 3 field days, in fact. But then the internet will move on to the next thing, because that is what the internet does. What you absolutely do not do, George Santos, is a primetime TV interview where you don't even pretend to show any remorse or contrition. But that's what Santos did, and we have got the tape. And we are going to break down that tape in painstaking detail right after Jim Eagle hits the damn music. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the only thing bigger than the power of your dreams is the cold, hard fist of reality. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And let's just dive right the hell into this thing, shall we?
Congressman-elect Santos, thank you for joining us today. First question I really want to ask you, now that all of this has been revealed, is what does the word integrity mean to you?
Well, Tulsi, thank you for having me. You know, to answer your question, integrity is very important. And like I said to the New York Post, embellishing my resume was a mistake.
What does it mean, though? What does it mean? Because the meaning of the word actually matters in practice.
Now here, right off the bat, right at the start, you've got Tulsi Gabbard doing the correct thing and not letting the guy duck the first question and go straight into his monologue that he's probably been practicing for the last 4 or 5 hours. Tulsi Gabbard, who is an out-of-work politician, mind you, and not a professional journalist, but the professional journalists would nonetheless do well to be taking notes here.
Of course, it means to carry yourself in an honorable way.
Nope, not really. If we refer to the Oxford English Dictionary and not some woke American dictionary, we get the definition: the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, semicolon. Moral uprightness. I'm not sure that I'm willing to allow carry yourself in an honorable way. In fact, I'm certain that I'm not. A man can carry himself however he likes, and it's got nothing to do with his integrity. That is to say, you can't judge a man's honor by the way he walks, and especially not when he is walking gingerly because he is pretending he has just had his ritual Jewish circumcision done.
And I made a mistake.
Yup. And it's a mistake that grows bigger and more severe with each word that escapes your lips. And we're still on the first answer to the first question, ladies and gentlemen.
And I think humans are flawed, and we all make mistakes, Tulsi.
Yeah, there you go. That's the ticket. She threw you off your game. You weren't able to do the monologue you'd rehearsed. You know it's going badly. You need to flail around for something to dig yourself out of this hole with. And what makes a better shovel than moral relativism? Hey, look, we've all made mistakes before, right? Says the guy who got elected to Congress on a resume and a life story that was around 90% fictional. And we know what the thrust of this particular canard is, don't we? It's the canard that says, well, unless you have lived a perfect, sinless, blameless life in each and every respect, you may not criticize me for impersonating a Hebrew. Very classy indeed, George. I'm sure your future constituents are totally not second-guessing themselves for having voted for you right now.
I think we can all look at ourselves in the mirror and admit that once in our life we made a mistake. I'm having to admit this in national television for the whole country to see.
And now I think I just want to fucking punch that guy. You think you've got it bad, Mr. and Mrs. America? All I did was innocently impersonate a Jew because I thought it might get me a few extra votes. And I'm having to talk about it now, on national television no less. So unless you have walked a mile in my loafers, I don't need to hear any more lip out of you assholes.
And I have the courage to do so because I believe that in order to move past this and move forward and be an effective member of Congress, I have to face my mistakes, and I'm facing them.
Wow, he actually just called himself courageous. That is a real thing that happened. And why the hell shouldn't it? This man's forebears, they withstood the horrors of Egyptian chattel slavery. They wandered the wilderness for 40 years so that their progeny, and anyone who felt like pretending to be their progeny, could complain about having to go on TV when they get busted lying about their background. When will this vile anti-Semitism cease? When I say...
The reality is that I remain committed to doing everything I set forward in my campaign. I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake.
Yeah, you kind of are a fraud and a fake, George. Why else are we all here, after all? Because it sure as shit ain't for nobody's bar mitzvah, I can tell you that.
I didn't materialize from thin air. I worked damn hard to get where I got my entire life.
Don't you love the little quavering in the voice when he talks about how damn hard he worked to get to where he got? I bet he practiced that one at least a dozen times. And thanks for clarifying the fact that you didn't materialize out of thin air, George. It's good to remind the viewers there are some outlandish claims that you actually haven't made about yourself. But having said that, people do love a good magic trick, and I can't think of very many legendary Jewish illusionists, so there you go. There's your market niche. I bet you can corner it all for yourself. You're welcome.
Life wasn't easy. It didn't start off easy. As I've said it many, many times, I come from abject poverty.
Did you hear that one, poor people? Our buddy George says if you come from abject poverty, you don't understand the difference between truth and falsehood. So if you're a liar, it's not your fault, it's poverty's fault.
I made some mistakes, and I own up to them.
Now, George, I feel like you don't have a very good grasp on what owning up to one's mistakes actually looks like. I'm allowed to lie about being Jewish because I work hard and I used to be poor is not it.
And now I want to put
there
this
you go.
behind
There it
me
is,
so I
straight
can
from the
deliver for
Democrat
American
playbook.
people.
Can't we put this thing behind us and start delivering for the American people? It's one of the 3 stages of political denial. Stage 1 is, no, we are not doing that bad thing. You are a right-wing conspiracy theorist. Then stage 2 is, okay, fine, we totally were doing the bad thing, but that's old news now. Get a life, loser. Then stage 3 is, well, yes, we were doing the bad thing. We never stopped. We're still doing it, but the bad thing is actually a good thing. Also, shut up, racist.
The thing is, Congressman-elect, integrity means, yes, carrying yourself with honor, but it means telling the truth, being a person of integrity. And if I were one of those in New York's 3rd District right now that the election is over, and I'm finding out all of these lies that you've told, not just one little lie or one little embellishment, these are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame?
It's a rhetorical question, Tulsi. If the dude had any shame, he wouldn't be doing this interview in the first place, and he sure as shit wouldn't be giving any of the answers that he has given.
Do you have no shame in the people who are now, you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Wouldn't it be great if he gave one of these answers just like in perfect Yiddish?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States.
And this is the point where it starts becoming difficult to even laugh at this fool. This is basically the grown-up adult version of, I'm not the one who farted, he's the one who farted. Sure, maybe I went on that arson and vandalism spree, but I burned down fewer buildings than Joe Biden did. That's got to count for something, right?
Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame? I've made this very clear.
This is not about the Democratic Party, though. This is about your relationship, frankly, with the people who've entrusted you to go and fight for them. And I think one of the questions that really probably hits home to a lot of people is are you Jewish?
And there's the $64,000 question, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see how deftly he swats this one away.
We've got a letter that your campaign sent out earlier this year, which reads as follows. As a proud American Jew...
Ooh, ouch! That's gonna leave a mark.
I've been to Israel numerous times for educational, business, and leisurely trips. You said there in that letter that you are, quote, a proud American Jew. How do you explain that?
Now, this is the point where a sane man would say, I am so very sorry for falsely representing myself. I beg the people's forgiveness. I promise to be the best congressman in the whole wide world. Let's see if George is a sane man.
My heritage is Jewish. I've always identified as Jewish.
My heritage is Jewish, and I've always identified as Jewish. Wow. He decided to go full Dolezal, didn't he?
Was raised a practicing Catholic. I think I've gone through this. Even I've not being raised a practicing Jew, I've always joked with friends and circles, even in the campaign, I'd say, guys, I'm Jewish. Remember, I was raised Catholic. So,
you never go full Dolezal!
Look, I understand everybody wants to nitpick at me.
And since we've run just about the entire gambit of things that one should never say in a damage control interview, I guess it only stands to reason that we have arrived at, well, this is just a bunch of nitpicking. People should get a life.
I'm going to reassure this once and for all. I'm not a facade. I'm not a persona. I have an extensive career that I worked really hard to achieve.
You impersonate a Jew one time and people act like the sky has fallen. My God.
And I'm going to deliver from my experience because I remain committed in delivering results for the American people. I campaigned on inflation. I campaigned on crime. I campaigned on education. I campaigned on delivering resolve for the American people. That's what the people of the 3rd Congressional District heard me on and on as I campaigned.
I have an extensive career that I've worked really hard to achieve. Have you ever heard someone talk about their career that way? Because I myself have not.
Now it's going to be incumbent upon me to deliver on those results. And I look forward to serving my district. I look forward to serving my people in my district to make sure that they see that this is what...
looking for.
Yeah, George, and they also heard you say that you're descended from a Holocaust survivor, which appears to have been a total fabrication. And that is orders of magnitude more sleazy and gross than just falsely claiming that you're Jewish.
The results that people are looking for are called into question when you tell blatant lies, not embellishments. And this is, I think, one of the biggest concerns, Congressman-elect, is that you don't really seem to be taking this seriously.
Nobody in our political leadership class takes any of this stuff seriously. Nobody runs for Congress because they want to improve the lives of the people in their district. Give me a break. They run for Congress because they view it as a springboard to wealth and stardom, which it very often is. And so you get dull, shallow douchebags like this idiot who doesn't give 2 squirts of piss about the fact that he got caught lying. He's just annoyed that he has to explain himself to the idiot voters whom he very clearly views with a great deal of contempt.
You've apologized. You said you've made mistakes, but you've outright lied. A lie is not an embellishment on a resume. You said you worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, but they've said, we've got no record of this guy working for us. You've said you've gone to and graduated from these universities, but they've said, well, we've got no record of that. These are blatant lies, and it calls into question how your constituents and the American people can believe anything that you may say when you are standing on the floor of the House of Representatives supposedly fighting for them. That's the real issue here.
Yeah, you're damn right it's the real issue, and that is a hell of a long pause, George. Let's see you wriggle your way out of this one, you oily bastard.
Well, look, I agree with what you're saying, and as I stated, and I continue, we can debate my resume and how I worked with firms such as Goldman
Is
and
it
Citigroup
debatable,
all
or is
night
it
long,
just
but-
false?
No,
Is
it's
it debatable,
very, no,
or
it's
is it
very
just
debatable.
false?
Pro tip here, George, when you're describing the details of your own resume as debatable, it's safe to say the interview is not going that great for you.
No, it's not false at all. It's debatable. I can sit down and explain to you what you can do in private equity, in capital intro, via servicing limited partners and general partners. And we can have this discussion that's going to go way above the American people's head.
Oh, George, I think this is the point where we've reached Back to the Future 3 levels of gigantic, fiery train wreck. He just opened with a fun bit of misogyny and then closed by insulting the intelligence of his future constituents. Oh, sure, Tulsi, I could explain hedge funds and venture capital and all that stuff, but you don't need to worry your pretty little head about all that stuff. I think you and the dumbass voters in my district would all be happier if you left the deep thinking to me.
But that's not what I campaigned on. I campaigned on delivering results
Wow.
for the American people by lowering inflation. I can sit down, and if you want to have that discussion, I'd be glad to, Tulsi, to explain that to you and make sure that we settle the score.
Yeah, get him, Tulsi!
This is not about settling scores, and I think you just kind of highlighted, I think, my concern and the concern that people at home have. You're saying that this discussion will go way above the heads of the American people.
No, that is exactly what you just said, you dumb, smug, smarmy piece of shit. Look at this guy smirking like he thinks this is going well for him.
Basically insulting their intelligence. So not only are you now
That's
backtracking
not
on
what
these
I'm
lies
saying.
that you've
Except, yeah, it kind of is a made-up narrative. When you run for office saying you're a Jewish investment banker who used to work at Goldman Sachs, when the reality is that you're not Jewish, you're not an investment banker, and you only worked at Goldman Sachs in the same sense that the guy who cleans the fucking men's room works at Goldman Sachs, you don't get to act annoyed when the time comes for explaining yourself, young man.
told,
But
you're
Tulsi,
saying that you can't
that's not what
explain
I'm
it
saying.
in a way that your constituents would actually be able to
I
understand.
can explain it in a way
and that
if you
these
give me
lies are
if you give me
debatable.
the time. I can easily give the if you give me the time, I can easily explain it for you. As in when investors are looking for
Well, if you don't like being called a liar, have you considered not lying?
and I'm sitting there doing due diligence on the appetite and what they're looking for, right? And we work alongside GPs and LPs to help them place this capital. This is what I was doing, and that's when I worked extensively with these firms and many other firms at my time as I was vice president of Linkbridge Investors. So this isn't a made-up narrative.
Thank you very much indeed for watching. Here is wishing everyone a pleasant and agreeable new year. Jim Eagle and I will see you in 2023. Until next time, do not comply. Get off my lawn.